Welcome! Get ready for a deep dive into 10 of the most iconic high-speed legends from the 80s that absolutely deserve a comeback. Before we jump in, like and subscribe if you love timeless motorcycle classics as much as we do. Trust me, you won't want to miss any of the incredible bikes we're about to explore. Say the words power cruiser and V4 engine, and you'll likely have the Yamaha VMAX pop into your head. Picture it, an unapologetic 1,197cc liquid-cooled V4 with a monstrous 145 horsepower output. That much grunt in a low-slung machine redefined what a cruiser could be. At the time, cruisers were more about relaxed rides and raked-out front ends, while the VMAX basically said, "No thanks, we're here to burn rubber." It spelled trouble for quarter-mile challengers because it sprinted down the strip in a blazing 10 seconds. That immediate raw acceleration was enough to cement the VMAX's reputation as a drag strip assassin. Handling might have felt a little overshadowed by that raw power. But in the 80s, who cared about corner carving on a cruiser if you were the fastest thing on two wheels in a straight line? The VMAX quickly became an icon in its own right, evolving over time, but never losing that rebellious muscle bike DNA. Stay tuned, because in just a moment we'll be revisiting more epic feats of 80s engineering, including some firsts that changed motorcycling forever. Now, here's another name that's still very familiar today, the Vulcan. But back in 1984, it marked Kawasaki's first foray into cruiser territory, and most notably featured the manufacturer's inaugural V-twin engine. To skirt US import tariffs on bikes over 700 cc's, the very first Vulcan was actually a 699cc machine in America, though by 1986 that changed to the 749cc version for all markets. Looking back, the Vulcan story is also one of unwavering loyalty. Owners tended to cling to their machines, refusing to trade in for anything else, which really speaks to its comfort and reliability. But don't step away yet, because in a minute we're going to talk about an 80s cruiser from Yamaha that was friendlier to novices, but still fiercely competitive. If you were starting out in the late 80s and wanted a taste of the V-twin life, Yamaha's Virago was your best friend. Unveiled in 1988, the Virago was more approachable than the bigger XV750 and XV1100. It put out around 38 horsepower, which might sound modest, but the mid-range torque was enough to keep you excited without overwhelming those who were still refining their riding skills. Crucially, it sported a low seat height, welcoming shorter riders and women who might have felt intimidated by bigger, heavier machines. Its success lay in that perfect recipe of manageable power, easy handling, and classic cruiser style. Even today, if someone says, "I learned to ride on a Virago," you'll find a legion of fans who share memories of this user-friendly cruiser. Now, up next is a name that screams rugged endurance and all-terrain capability. So, if you like your bikes tough, you won't want to miss what's coming. Though the 80s version technically came out near the decade's end, there's no denying its influence. The 1988 XRV 650, built on the success of the Dakar-winning NXR 750, was the beginning of the African twin dynasty. Just imagine a bike engineered to endure the punishing rigors of the Dakar Rally. That's the Africa Twins DNA. With its purposeful fairing, proven engine, and a design that screamed, "Go anywhere, do anything," it kicked open the door for the iconic XRV 750 to come in 1989. Rarity adds to the XRV 650's mystique today. Tracking one down in mint condition can be quite the challenge, but that only underscores how special this piece of history is. Later, we'll jump into another enduro pioneer that shares some game-changing design cues still seen in modern ADV bikes. So, keep watching. In 1988, Ducati unleashed the 851, a sport bike that shook the foundations of performance riding by harnessing a new liquid-cooled 853cc V-twin pumping out 93 horsepower. The 851 carried the brand's signature Italian flair, both in aesthetics and performance. We often rave about the Ducati 916, but in truth, the 851 was the genesis of Ducati's modern superbike legacy. This was a time when Ducati was under the Cagiva umbrella, which brought fresh funds and engineering vision. The result was a bike that not only gave riders a taste of advanced technology, at least by 80s standards, but also boasted that gorgeous Ducati trellis frame. It had the soul of an Italian racer and the exact styling that turned heads at every track or cafe stop. Now we come to the Suzuki DR Big, sometimes called the DR 750 or DR 800, depending on displacement. Either way, big is definitely the right word. One glance and you'd see a massive presence tailored for off-road adventure. With a 30-liter fuel tank capacity, the DR Big was ready to tackle epic journeys, long before adventure touring was a buzzword. One of its real claims to fame is the fact that it was the first to sport that distinct brake front fender, which has become practically standard on modern ADVs. Not only was it huge, but it also packed one of the largest single-cylinder engines around, 727 cc's at one point, producing over 50 horsepower of thumping torque. If you love the concept of big single-cylinder brutes that can take on the world, the DR Big was a milestone in that lineage. By the way, soon we'll dive into a speed demon that boasted an incredible TT record, as well as a cameo in a blockbuster movie. Keep that mental throttle pinned because that's coming right up. This machine, also known as the Ninja 900, was a serious groundbreaker when it hit the market in 1984. For starters, it breezed past the 150 mph mark, 151 miles per hour to be precise, making it the first production motorcycle to break that milestone. And then there was the engine, a 16-valve inline-4, which was not just a major engineering leap, but also used as a stressed member in the frame, reducing weight and improving handling. When the GPZ900R debuted, it went on to shine at the Isle of Man TT, grabbing first and second place within 3 months of its unveiling. That feat alone is enough to make a bike legendary. But then it also had a certain movie cameo, courtesy of Tom Cruise in Top Gun. The GPZ900R's silhouette, with that distinctive fairing and bright color schemes, was unforgettable. Stick around because we still have 3 more amazing 80s icons to revisit, including a race bike so exclusive it bordered on unicorn status. Here's one for the purists and racing fanatics, the Honda VFR 750R RC30. Technically classed as a production bike, it was definitely a homologation special with only 3,000 units produced. It was bred for competition, featuring high-end goodies like titanium connecting rods, fully adjustable Showa suspension, a single-sided swing arm, and even a slipper clutch. Right after its launch in 1987, the RC30 conquered the first 2 World Superbike Championship titles in 1988 and 1989. A testament to how racing-focused this machine was straight out of the factory. The engine was a 748cc V4 that sang a glorious exhaust note while churning out enough horsepower to obliterate racetracks. But don't step away just yet, because we're heading into the final 2 bikes, one that practically defines the term futuristic 80s design, and another that's widely regarded as the father of the modern adventure segment. Retro is huge now, but if you hopped into a time machine and landed in the 80s, futuristic design was all the rage. In that arena, the Suzuki Katana reigned supreme. Conceived by the German Target design team, the Katana was all sharp angles, streamlined bodywork, and a stance that screamed speed. According to Suzuki, it was the fastest mass-production motorcycle at the time, courtesy of its 1075cc power plant. The Katana line was also expanded to various displacements and special race editions. Some featured turbo options, others were built purely for the track. And while the design might look a little retro cool now, at the time it was radical. In fact, the current reimagined Katana pays homage to that cutting-edge ethos, blending a modern engine with a fresh spin on the original's silhouette. One more left, folks, and it might just be the bike that launched an entire category of unstoppable do-it-all motorcycles. And here we are, the BMW R80 GS. This behemoth didn't just define an era, it founded a whole new segment, the modern adventure motorcycle. GS stood for Geländestrasse, roughly translated to off-road, on-road. At first, critics weren't sure what to do with a big, heavy, horizontally opposed twin that seemed too bulky for serious trail riding, and too tall for typical road use. But eventually, everyone realized that a bike that can handle a bit of everything is actually invaluable. Despite its initial lukewarm reception, the R80 GS proved unbelievably capable in both realms, trading a bit of road performance for vastly increased off-road ability. This concept was practically unheard of in an era when street and dirt were two distinctly separate paths. Within its robust boxer engine and shaft drive, it quickly became a go-anywhere, do-anything champion. That about wraps it up, but if you've been paying attention, you'll notice a pattern. These 80s masterpieces all have something special under their fairings. Whether it's a racing pedigree, a groundbreaking design, a monstrous engine, or the ability to do it all, these bikes build foundations that echo in today's motorcycle world. Each one of these motorcycles deserves a comeback because, let's face it, many modern bikes owe their existence to the leaps in innovation these icons made. Or maybe you just yearn for the rawness of an 80s machine. Before electronics took over, before traction control and rider modes, that old school mechanical connection still calls to riders who want a visceral, unfiltered experience. So, which of these 80s icons would you bring back if you had the power? Let us know your top pick or any others you think should have made a return to modern showrooms. As we sign off, remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this whirlwind tour of 80s speed machines, and you want to see more deep dives into legendary rides. We've got plenty more lined up, from epic cruisers to hyperbikes and everything in between. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and stay hungry for more motorcycle history. After all, you never know which old school legend might be reborn next.